We are co-creators. We can't just keep having the same issues and talking about them over and over again and expect them to disappear by themselves. And so as co-creators on this journey, our experience in life depends largely on our thoughts and our reactions. And that's principle 3 of our 5 unity principles, I think it. And we have a great phrase in unity. It's called thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. That means that if you're holding thoughts of lack and scarcity, you're going to get more of that in your life. If you're holding thoughts of bitterness or resentfulness, you'll create more of that in your life. Like attracts like. But if you hold thoughts of joy and love and gratitude and peace and prosperity, life responds in kind as well. So we become co-creators with God. We get out of that victim stage where God is outside of ourselves and we're begging to God to change our life. We become then victors. Woo! Thank you, Matt and Glenn and Rob and Courtney, all of you. Well, good morning. You know, unity is all about transformation. Our vision and our mission statement both talk about transforming our lives. Our 5th principle in unity is we live it. It's not enough to just know these truths. We must live them out. And yet, oftentimes we look at our lives and we realize we're far from where we'd like to be. We don't feel free. We don't feel transformed. We're still struggling with issues, like health and prosperity and forgiveness. We oftentimes feel like a victim of circumstances. So I'd like to share something with you. I'm sure some of you have heard this before, but it might be the first time for some of you. It's a poem by Portia Nelson, and it's called An Autobiography in 5 Short Chapters. Now, this could have been my autobiography. I'm sure many of you could probably be your autobiography too. So, chapter 1, I walk down the street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I fall in. I am lost. I am helpless. It isn't my fault. It takes forever to find a way out. Chapter 2, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I pretend I don't see it. I fall in again. I can't believe I'm in the same place. But it isn't my fault. It still takes a long time to get out. Chapter 3, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I see it is there. I still fall in. It's a habit. My eyes are open. I know where I am. It's my fault. And I get out immediately. Chapter 4, I walk down the same street. There's a deep hole in the sidewalk. I walk around it. Chapter 5, I walk down another street. We laugh when we hear this because we can relate to it, can't we? We can recognize ourselves in it. We've all had a hole in the sidewalk experience that we kept falling into. I doubt there's one person here who can't think back and remember some whole experience. For some of us, it might have been a long time ago. And for some of us, it could be as far away as yesterday. In the first chapter of life, we fall into a hole. That hole could be anything. Could be a disease, a death, a divorce, all those D letters. And the death could be the death of a job, death of a relationship, the death of an idea. And it's not our fault. And of course, as long as we don't see our part in any of us, we're doomed to keep repeating that behavior again and again. It's what we call victim mentality. It's not our fault. It's always the other person's fault or circumstances or life or bad luck. If only I'd been born rich. If only I'd lived somewhere else. If only I was more talented, more good-looking, thinner, more outgoing. If only I would win the lottery, then my life would work. So in this state of consciousness, we're dependent on something outside of ourselves. We're always looking outside of ourselves for fulfillment or for our value. So That's what we need in order to be happy, is something outside of ourselves. And you know, I did victim consciousness really well in my younger years. I was abandoned at a very young age. I lived in foster homes. I wasn't adopted until I was 6 years old, and then it was by much older parents in their 50s. So I'm sure you've had a similar experience, maybe not that one, but you've had some sort of experience where you started with that consciousness. And even if you had a wonderful childhood, and I met some people that have, I'm amazed that some people actually have wonderful childhoods. But even if you've done that, you've had some hole in the sidewalk experience. Jesus tells us, he who finds his life will lose it, and he who loses his life for my sake will find it. He who finds his life. So the first part of our journey, our spiritual journey, is attempting to find ourselves, to find our life. And a life is a process. The process often starts with that victim consciousness, this falling in the hole in the sidewalk. And that's an important part of our journey. It creates in us an impetus, a divine discontent, a desire to seek something greater than ourselves. We get tired of falling in that hole in the sidewalk, and when we get tired enough, we get motivated to find a way out. And sometimes life has a way of continually pushing us into that hole, and until we get so good and tired of it. And in fact, some people have to fall really into a deep hole. We call it hitting bottom. And those of you that are in AA know what I'm talking about. But all of us come to unity, and we continue to come to unity because unity gives us tools for finding our life. It gives us tools to help us get free from the hole. We're able to move out of that victim consciousness and become free. We move from victim consciousness to victor. We become victorious over our circumstances and our life, and we get up out of that hole. But again, life is a process. Sooner or later, we find ourselves falling into a hole again. Maybe not the same one, but we would find one similar. We'd fall into another relationship or another situation where we felt trapped. So the first step in getting free from the holes of life is awareness. Now, awareness was a really big word around the 70s. At least it was in California. I don't know what it was like in Texas. But in California, we had encounter groups and seminars, and everyone was going around talking about awareness. So we become aware, first of all, that the holes exist, that there's a pattern here. We keep falling in. We keep doing that same thing over and over again. We keep having the same spending habits, the same attitudes about money. We end up not having enough. The definition of insanity is doing the same things over and over again, expecting different results. And so our awareness moves us into a realization that we have a choice to do things differently. But awareness in and of itself is not enough. There has to be some change that takes place. Now, the Native Americans have a tradition. They have these circles, and people will bring their issue into the Native American circle. But if they bring the issue 3 times and haven't done anything to change it, they are banished from the circle. Because the Native Americans know that we play a part in our growth and in our evolution. We are co-creators. We can't just keep having the same issues and talking about them over and over again and expect them to disappear by themselves. And so as co-creators on this journey, our experience in life depends largely on our thoughts and our reactions. And that's principle 3 of our 5 unity principles. I think it. And we have a great phrase in unity. It's called, thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. Thoughts held in mind produce after their kind. That means that if you're holding thoughts of lack and scarcity, you're going to get more of that in your life. If you're holding thoughts of bitterness or resentfulness, you'll create more of that in your life. Like attracts like. But if you hold thoughts of joy and love and gratitude and peace and prosperity, life responds in kind as well. So we become co-creators with God. We get out of that victim stage where God is outside of ourselves and we're begging to God to change our life. We become then victors, where we become co-creators. So no longer are we relying on anything outside of ourselves. We know that we have to do the work. So we go within, we look for our part in the drama. And again, life's a process. So it's a journey. It doesn't travel in a straight line. It's kind of like a figure eight. So you're going to find yourself going back over old territory. You'll fall into the hole again. It's a habit. It's familiar, it's known. But the more aware you become and the more internal work that you do, the quicker you're able to get up out of that hole. You know, stuff happens in life. And our experience doesn't have to be determined by what happens to us, but how we react to what happens to us. You know, Earth is a school. It's not a retirement home. And as long as we're still here, I don't care if you're 95 years old, if you haven't ascended yet and you're still walking this planet, you still have work to do. Life isn't about never, ever confronting holes in the sidewalk. That's the mistake many of us make. We think, well, I'm on this spiritual path. There shouldn't be any more problems. Everything should work perfectly all the time. Well, give up that fantasy right now because it's a lie. There will always be challenges. I think that's been a misteaching that people have in unity sometimes. It's like, well, if I follow these spiritual principles, I shouldn't have any problems. Jesus was crucified, guys. There isn't anybody on this planet that lived these principles to the T. He did them very well, and yet he was still crucified. He had to face that challenge. But it didn't stop him, did it? So it isn't about getting rid of the holes. It's about learning how to face them. It's about how you handle yourself and life when you come face to face with those holes, and how to make sure each one is different than the one before. You know, if you're constantly falling into the same hole, if you find yourself having the same experience over and over again, or a similar experience, it's probably not out there. If you find yourself getting angry again and again, or depressed or upset again and again over similar issues, that's a signal for you to look and see, well, what is my part in this, and how can I change that? You have to be doing your inner work, because there will always be holes. And actually falling into a hole is one of life's wake-up calls. It's an opportunity for us to look at our life and decide if we want to respond in the same way we always have, or do we want to make some changes? Because we're evolving creatures, we'll always have opportunities to grow and expand. So your doctor tells you you've got an illness, you've fallen into a hole. But it's life saying, hey, something needs to change here. Your partner walks out on you. You've fallen into a hole. Now, you can grieve for a while, walk down that same street and meet your partner again with a new face. In other words, you haven't changed any of your behavior. You're still walking down the same street. You'll fall in that same hole again. We all have those holes. I have them around diet and food. You know, I go on a diet and lose a few pounds, and then I get the same behavior again. Being aware, being conscious, being a co-creator is oftentimes hard work, because it means we're responsible. Being unconscious is a whole lot easier. So you fall in the hole, it's not your fault, even though it's not any fun in there. It's something that we know, it's something that we're used to. It's comfortable. And change is difficult, isn't it? Isn't it kind of hard? It takes a little bit of effort on our part. And yet the amazing thing is that once you start making those choices to get up out of the hole, you start noticing how your life changes. It does get easier. The holes are not as deep. They appear much further apart. They're much easier to climb out of. As you keep living these principles, developing your prayer life, what happens is you start noticing those holes before you even get to them. So you can choose to walk around them or to go down a totally different sidewalk. But we always know that even if you're going along for a while and everything's great, some storm will happen and you'll find yourself dealing with that again. You see, Jesus said, he who finds his life will lose it. Now, you've found your life by letting go of victim consciousness. You learned how to become a co-creator, how to become a victor. You learn how to make choices. But the scripture goes on to say, then after you find your life, you will lose it. But it doesn't stop there. It says, he who loses his life for my sake will find it. So transformation doesn't end in becoming a victor. It doesn't come in learning how to co-create our lives. I know when you first came to Unity, you learned all about co-creating stuff. You know, I used to co-create parking spaces, and you would co-create. I co-created a husband. That is a step in the process. But the next step in transformation is to move from being the victor to being the vehicle through which Spirit moves. You see, when we're falling in the holes and living the life of a victim, we have no will. Whatever life throws at us, we just accept. And then we learn these principles. We start developing our will. We start realizing we can state how we like life to be, how we want life to be, and it will be that way. And that's kind of exciting and wonderful. In this stage, our prayers change from begging and beseeching to affirming and visualization. We teach that in Unity, and yet the growth doesn't stop there. The next step is in surrendering our will. It's when we're able to move to not my will, but thine be done, that we discover true freedom and transformation. Because at that point, we've acknowledged we're not on this journey alone, that Spirit is moving, directing through us, as us, and we trust that process. And it does take a very strong person to give up control and surrender. We're so used to doing things on our own. You know, we've learned how to be sufficient, and we can do all kinds of things on our own. But there comes a time when you have to realize that to go deeper in this spiritual life, you have to give up control of your life. You can no longer do it alone. I want to read something to you. This is called The Heavenly Bike Shop. Hello, and welcome to the Heavenly Bike Shop. I'm the manager here. My name is Christine Kickstand. And I'm here today to show you around and have you take a look at this wonderful and life-changing place. The Heavenly Bike Shop is a universal showroom representing different modes of spiritual transformation, all of which come in the form of bicycles. Because as we discover that we are all divine beings, having a human experience, it's kind of like riding a bike for the first time. So people come here to the Heavenly Bike Shop to choose their cycle of transformation. And we have all kinds of different bikes here for all different kinds of people. We have unicycles for those of you who think you just want to be on your own for a while. We have quick shifting 10 speeds for those of you who feel like maybe you've been stuck in the same gear for a long time. And for those of you who feel like maybe you're falling down a lot, and you know who you are, you have the scabs to prove it. I have 2 words for you guys. Training wheels. Training wheels. Or you might want to try our 12-step tricycle, either one. But a lot of people have been coming to the Heavenly Bike Shop for one reason, and that is an upgrade. These people are real quick to trade in their current cycle for anything new, the latest style, the sleekest bike, and we have bikes like that here too, real flashy. They're real fast too, but they don't go very far, which is okay for these people because they're much more concerned with how they look than where they're going. And I can assure you, these people are going nowhere fast. I know, I used to be one of those people. I was what they call a coaster. All I wanted to do was coast through life. What I didn't realize was that in order to coast, you had to be going downhill. So after years of ending up in terrible places, I finally learned something. And what I learned is now our motto here at the Heavenly Bike Shop. What I learned changed my life. What I learned is that you need to pray as if your dreams depend on God, and you need to move your feet as if your dreams depend on you. I learned I had some major footwork to do, and I learned that I needed help. So I invited God to share my life sincerely on a daily basis. And I came here to the Heavenly Bike Shop to trade in my flashy cycle for a sturdy tandem bike. And I asked God to sit on the back to help me pedal, to get me to the places where I wanted to go. I don't know exactly when it was that God suggested that we switch places. My life has never been the same since. You see, when I was in control, I knew the way. My life was rather boring, but predictable. It was the shortest distance between 2 points. When God took the lead, God knew delightful long cuts, up big mountains of faith and down through rocky places of fear at great speeds. It was all I could do to hang on. It looked like madness to me, but God said, pedal, pedal. And I complained, and I was anxious, and I was nervous. And I said, where are you taking me? And God just gently said, pedal, pedal. And I started to learn to trust. And I forgot my boring world, and I entered into the adventure. And when I say I'm scared, God would reach back and touch my hand. And she took me to people that I needed to meet, people that gave me gifts of courage and acceptance and joy. And then we were off again. And God said, give those gifts away. And so I did. I gave them to the people that we met. And I found that in giving, I also received. I have to admit, I did not trust God at first in control of my life. I thought he'd wreck it. But God knows bike secrets. She knows how to bend it to make the sharp corners in life. He knows how to make it jump to clear the high rocks of frustration. And she knows how to make it fly to shorten scary passages. And now I let God run my life. And I'm learning to shut up and pedal in the most important places. And I'm beginning to enjoy the view. I'm beginning to enjoy the cool breeze on my face as I move my feet together with God. And when I know I can't do anymore, God just smiles and says, pedal, pedal. This is the Heavenly Bike Shop. And I invite you to come in today and trade in your flashy cycle for a sturdy tandem bike. And sincerely invite God to sit in front and then hang on for the ride of your life. God bless you.
Divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all that I am, all that I have, all that I circulate, and I am grateful.